You just left a meeting at the White House with President Trump. He doesn't hide his frustrations with NATO countries. How was the meeting? Did he say he would withdraw?
Well, let me be absolutely clear. He is clearly disappointed. With many NATO allies, and I understand his point. But at the same time, I was also able to highlight the fact that the vast majority of European nations have been helpful with bases, with logistics, with overflights, making sure they fulfill their commitments. And there is also broad support that degrading Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile capabilities was crucial, and that only the United States were able at this moment to do exactly that. And let's not forget Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, who is now gathering a coalition of more than 30, perhaps even more than 40 participating countries. Yesterday, in a planning meeting with military leaders to ensure that the maritime routes remain open, that the use of the Strait of Hormuz in the future is possible. So I also pointed out a positive side to him. But clearly it was a very frank discussion, very open, but also a conversation between two good friends.
The president said he would try to withdraw from NATO, or at least not support NATO as much as other presidents have supported it.
Well, as I said, there is clearly some disappointment, but at the same time, he also listened carefully to my arguments about what is happening. I also pointed out that it was his leadership that brought about the 5% spending commitment.
Yes,
represents a transformative change in NATO. He leaves behind a transformative legacy. This is NATO 3.0, where Europeans take better care of their own defense, which strengthens both Europe and NATO.
The leader, Mark Rutte, meets with the president.
President Trump yesterday tried to dissuade him from leaving the alliance. After the meeting, Trump wrote on Truth Social, "NATO wasn't there when we needed it, and it won't be there if we need it again. Remember Greenland? That big, poorly managed piece of ice?" According to reports, the president is considering a plan to withdraw American troops from NATO countries that refuse to help in Iran. We called Michael Allen, former director of the National Security Council under George W. Bush. The president didn't say, "I want to leave NATO," but he is quite disappointed that NATO isn't helping or even letting us use their bases. Spain, for example, didn't permit use of its airspace.
Yes, look, I think some of these Western European nations, not NATO, but countries from Eastern or Western Europe, have been unpleasant, saying, "This isn't our fight. It will have negative repercussions here in the United States for some time yet." But our decisions about where the military should have bases must be based on military needs and national security. I have my doubts whether we still need them in Spain. So if a review removed them from Spain, a force posture review, I think I would be comfortable with that. But I would be hesitant to try to pull out of Germany. I would be hesitant to try to pull out of Italy. Let's put the blame where it really belongs, which is on the center-left governments of Western Europe and not on NATO.
Well, Italy said we can't use the base in Sicily. Why are we paying for this? If we didn't inform them or involve them from the start and they want to throw a tantrum and make a scene, that's fine. But not letting us use the bases is completely unacceptable. And no one will forget that. Reagan dealt with this too, right?
Yes, he did. Europe has done this to us before, and we need to put an end to it, especially with Italy, which has a relatively friendly government. We should be able to explain to them that they need to be on our side in these extreme situations. This will certainly have negative repercussions. They need to make up for it by investing in their defense industrial base to play a role in future contingencies. Because in the end, Brian, they have quite limited capability. Maybe they'll take part in escorts or monitor the Strait of Hormuz, assuming we can get through this ceasefire period. But they're not good at it, and they don't have the same capability as the United States, so we shouldn't fool ourselves about their usefulness from the start.
Remember, they don't learn from the war between Ukraine and Russia. They're not ready for drones. In Europe, they're seeing the proximity and lethality of Shahed drones and the role they play in the war between Ukraine and Russia. Now, according to Business Insider, they're rushing to come up with a plan. Before the conflict with Iran and the invasion of Ukraine, cheap drones were attacking targets in the Middle East, signaling a new kind of warfare. NATO ignored the warnings and, according to a commander, is now rushing to change tactics. And who stands to profit from this? Ukraine, because they innovated on the fly.
Right. Something interesting about the war in Ukraine is how frequently drone technology changes. We, in the United States Armed Forces, are learning a lot from the lessons received. We seek to understand how these drones were used, NATO and the Euro. Europeans need to do the same. NATO is a complex bureaucracy that's difficult to manage, so it must have trouble absorbing some of these lessons, but we need to do it. This here is the future of war. Drones are part of practically every targeting decision, in addition to first-person view drones that chase Russian soldiers on their own. So we need to study this thoroughly and prepare ourselves well, and count on the Ukrainians to teach us.
Yes. Oh, and by the way, it's very important for Ukraine to succeed. They have the second largest army in Europe and are the best fighting force. Poland called for seriousness about the threat of the U.S. leaving NATO. They're taking it seriously, paying less than 2%. Spain, Portugal, Albania, Belgium, and Canada are the freeloaders. Thank you, Mike Allen.
Thank you.